Hey yo, diggity dog, it's time for another Inkcyclopedia entry, dogs, or something. Today we're going to be talking about Rohrer und Klingner Alt Goldgrün. It says Goldgrün here, but it's Alt Goldgrün. I got a sample, you know the sample, I talked about that last week, a sample baggie from Chris. A lot of stuff in there, including Alt Goldgrün, and I was quite happy with that because this is an ink I get a lot of review requests for, so I'm quite happy that I've got a sample of it now, and I can't tell you anything about the bottle because I just have a sample, of course. Whoops, and I just dropped it, but that's all right. I'm going to have a look at that ink. I kind of liked it. I think it was a pretty cool ink, I have to say. And there's something else I'd like to share with you, and that is that this, not this, but the writing bit of this video is the first video I've recorded with this. I decided to get a better camera. So far, I mean, when I started doing my videos, they were just, I didn't do any writing recordings, and of course I quickly found out that that's not useful in fountain pen reviews. So I started to use a small pocket digicam on the video setting, which only had a 640 by 480 resolution, I think. Then I upgraded to another photo camera, again, which I put in the video setting, which worked better, had a much higher resolution, but still wasn't ideal. And now I got me something yesterday that's full HD compatible, etc. So I hope you appreciate that, because I got some requests for a better camera. Well, here you got it, yeah? Like stuff. So enjoy. I hope this is going to be useful. I know this is an ink a lot of people are looking forward to see, so have fun. I hope this is going to be useful, and I'll see you later. Bye bye. Okay, so here we go with Rohrer und Klingner Alt Goldgrün, a much requested Inkcyclopedia ink. I know a lot of people love this, and I never got around to buying one, you know, a bottle. So it's nice that I have a sample of it now. That was fine. How about a medium nib? Nice green, definitely some shading going on there. I think that's only going to be more pronounced now that we move to the B nib. I think the name Goldgrün is fairly well chosen. I'm not sure whether there is a very specific meaning, but literally it means, of course, gold green. And it is, I mean, it is definitely green with some interesting sheen to it. Not Charlie sheen, but I mean some type of interesting, nice thing going on. Very, very interesting color. And the final thing we need to do is flexing. Always an interesting challenge. I'm not slowing down here, I'm going full speed. And the pen just keeps up. And up and up and up. How about that? Is that excellent flow or what? Impressive. Okay. Maybe we should do a bit of fat writing with a really big pen. But before we do that, let's have a couple of passes. A nice olivey green. Okay, let's too thin, but that's alright. It's not a calligraphy lesson. It is just a bit of fat writing. How are we doing in the field of drying? Still a bit wet near the bottom, but it's already drying up, so that's pretty good. Alright. While we are waiting for this, we may as well have a look at some medium writing. And I think we're pretty much ready for that second pass now. Yeah. One more pass is to follow a bit later. I think we can prepare. Is this dry? Yeah, that's pretty much dry now. Then I think we can first prepare ourselves for that very sad moment of the bastard brush. There we go. And this is not entirely dry yet. So I think we can also have a look at the Tardiff test. Of course, a moment I know many of you are waiting for every week. The brown benchmark. That was a pretty lame benchmark. Better. And now the benchmark and the Tardiff test have evolved into one odd thing. How about that? Alright, just cleaning my fingers there, and I'm ready to go. And I'm ready to go for a third pass before we forget. This is the demarcation point, where brown benchmark and Tardiff test are separated. And you know what? I think we can have a look at the eyedropper of death. Okay. And while all of those tests are drying, I think we can make a start with the scorecard. And that's what I'm going to do right now. Scorecard. Cleaning. Well, in all honesty, I have not yet cleaned this ink out of my pens. However, I have asked Aziza, who knows a lot about ink, uses a lot of ink, about her opinion, and she says it's really easy to clean. So I'm going to give this full marks there. Then we have bleed through, and obviously that's something we'll have to see a bit later. Then there's color. Well, color is an olive green, I think that's safe to say. Then we have shading. Shading, I would say, let's have a look at some of these test results we got going there. First of all, we've got the writing, of course. I think the writing is definitely showing us shading in the broader nibs. Even in the medium nib you can see shading, and you in fact can even see shading in the very light touch with the fine nib. So this is one well shaded ink. I'm just drying a bit off here as I go along. Then we have the 3 passes test, going from a non-saturated to a highly saturated nib. Also quite some shading going on there. So I think it is safe to say that this is a very well shaded ink. Full marks. Then we have flow. And flow is excellent. Even with the flex pen, it just writes straight away, no issues. I'm quite impressed by that. Then we have feathering. We'll check that after the copying paper. We have drying time. Well, on Rhodia paper that's a bit long, but even here it seems to be pretty good. It's not extremely fast drying. I mean, it's not the super fast drying type of ink. Right now I'd give that 2, so a middle score, so it's definitely good. And then we have waterproofness. Well, if you thought we'd found the perfect ink, I don't think so, because the writing here is pretty much gone, especially in these bits, and I didn't use more water than I usually do or anything. And this fat writing is almost completely eradicated. So, I mean, you still see a sort of a shady outline, but the ink is pretty much gone. And look at this beautiful Tardiff test, by the way. That's turned out very nicely. So, waterproofness, I'm afraid it's a low score. Alright, then I want to switch to some Copier paper. And we'll go through all the motions yet again. Where's my little thing? Here we go. That's what she told me. Here we go. I'm going to turn this around. The bit I was writing on wasn't flat. You had this, this is somewhat bubbly and odd, and that didn't really help. Alright, and I've also put ink on the paper, but that's alright, that's alright. Goldgrün. This is better. Alright. Because it seemed to skip, and it didn't do so on the Rhodia paper. Now I want to know where my cap is. Oh, here we go. Alright, then we'll have some medium writing. Goldgrün. Perhaps this is a good moment to stress that in German, when a umlaut, so these little dots, are added to a vowel, the sound actually changes, right? So if I were to write broad, this is alt Goldgrün. Grün would be a different sound than grün. You hear the difference? Now, a lot of Anglo-Saxon people use this word as in super, you know, like ultra or a lot, and they would often say that is uber cool or whatever, something like that. If you want to use the word, then it's über, right? It's not uber. It would be uber if these dots were not there, but they are there, so it's über. Just saying. Alright. Now we have italic. And I need a sip of tea, how about that? Ah, much better. alt, Goldgrün. No, wait, grün. Alright. Now it's starting to get interesting. Flicks. There we go. You can't push it too far. This paper is more absorbent, and then if you do this very quickly, you start to get some railroading. But as you can see, the pen picks up pretty quickly after this. Give it some rest. There we go. You know, there's an issue. I'm not sure whether you can see that. Hey, I have a fancy video camera now. I want to zoom in. Do you zoom in? Zoom in. Ooh, yeah. Zoom, baby. You see the problem? I see the problem. I see the failure of the pen. There is a gap. This is my Tardiff test proboscis. This is a gap between the feed and the nib. You see that gap? That gap is ruining my writing. Sorry, I have a bit of a cold. My voice sometimes suffers. And this gap is the reason that sometimes the flex pen gives up. Capillary action draws ink from the ink reservoir on the inside of the barrel, in this case a converter, through the feed. There is a feed channel on top of the feed, which you cannot see because this is the bottom end of the feed. And then there is the nib, and the nib has this slit through which ink is sort of drawn. This is a flex nib, so the slit is quite tight. But if you have this gap right there, then ink does not go all the way to the end of the nib and then is not drawn onto the paper through the very last bit of the nib. So this is the reason we have a problem. And if Houston has a problem, Houston should solve it. So we need to close that gap. This is probably not in focus, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to blur the feel, I'm just pushing down on the nib a bit. How about that? Inkcyclopedia turns into pen tuning. Alright, so I can't do it with my fingers. I'm going to zoom out just a bit. No, that's zooming in. This is zooming out. It's hot. New camera. Bear with me. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the cap. This is metal. I'm going to put some tissues over that. I'm going to push up. So I'm pulling on my pen now. I was just doing this, pushing down on the feed. Oops. That worked. I just overdid it a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then what I want to do is close that gap. But this is a stubborn nib. And I can't really heat set this because it's a plastic feed. Excessively stubborn. I'm going to be working on this and I'm going to report my progress. And I think I've now ruined the writing with this pen for now because I've almost drawn out all the ink. Alright. Whatever is left, squeezed in there. Hey Flexi Lady, the fact that this doesn't write means one thing, and that is that Oppa Gangnam Style is really past its prime. And that means I'm just going to cap this pen. Where is the cap? Here's the cap. What we need to do is some fat writing on this paper. And we need to see how that is working out for us. Let's cover the writing. So what we've got is writing in 4 different styles, as in fine, medium, broad, italic and flex. You see major amounts of feathering here in the flex sample. A little bit of feathering in the very fat writing sample, but that is not too bad, I think. But here it's extremely pronounced. So, you know, I pretty much say this every week. You're probably not going to do a lot of flex writing on cheap Copier paper, but even so, there is some feathering there. As to bleed through, a lot of bleed through for the flex, bleed through for the fat writing, and quite some bleed through for the normal writing in broad, even in medium. I wasn't exerting a lot of pressure or anything. Some in the italic, but not a whole lot. A little bit in the fine. So there you have it. So when we are finishing up our scorecard, I'm turning this around again. There you go. I would say that bleed through. I mean, there's probably no bleed through on this paper. No, except on the really excessive test, but also on the flex writing. And for Rhodia paper, that is interesting. I'm not going to give this terrible marks on feathering, just because, I mean, Copier paper, I'm not sure whether that's something a lot of fountain pen users use. Then again, if you're using this for your work, you know, you can't really pick your paper. It doesn't bleed through on the Rhodia with all pens. It just does so with very wet ones. I'm going to give it a middle score. But it's definitely, you know what, I'm going to give this the terrible score, because there is a lot of bleed through, and if this happens even on Rhodia paper, then I find that a little bit worrisome. So there you have it. And then finally, that was feathering. Actually, I can't read. So this was the bleed through, and then feathering. Well, it's quite severe, but actually only in the flex writing. So I'm going to give that a 2. And in flex writing you see it. But I have the feeling I even see a little bit of it here and there on the Rhodia. I'm not sure. You know, fancy camera, zoom in again. Zoom, zoom, zoom. You can do it, you can do it. Focus, 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 focus. You can do it. Okay, maybe you can't. Okay, maybe you can't. Go back, go back, go back. Yeah, there we go. Yeah! Zoom in. Alright, I see a little bit of feathering there, in the eye, and there are spots where I see it. So I think we can safely conclude that there is some feathering going on, definitely. Alright, final thing I want to do is compare it to another ink. Usually I do that with my flex pen, but I happen to have one pen inked up with the ink I wanted to compare this to. So here you have Rohrer und Klingner Alt Goldgrün. This is the ink color. And I want to compare that to, and for that I'm going to use my Visconti Opera Crystal, which happens to have this ink in there. This is Gerbin Vert Olive. Olive green, obviously. And I think the Alt Goldgrün is a little bit darker, but it's definitely this sort of color. I think the Vert Olive is a little less impressive in the shading department than the Alt Goldgrün is, but it's still a pretty nice ink, and it's definitely in that range of green if you enjoy those things. Alright, so I hope this was a little useful, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.